Good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Dana Pauly. I'm Interim Executive Director for Leadership Montgomery, and we'd like to welcome you to Voting 101, what you need to know about voting this year. It's hard to believe, but Election Day is just around the corner on November 3rd. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had all of the information that they needed so that they could vote in the manner that works best for them and that they had all appropriate deadlines in front of them. Before I introduce our speakers, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping rules. Please make sure that you are muted if you are not speaking. We will be able to use the chat functions for any questions that you might have, and we will have an opportunity for Q&A later on this hour. We will be sending out resources after the session, and please note that we have started to record, and we'll be using this session through our social media and on our website. We just have one ground rule for today's session, and that is to remember that this session is for information, not to have any political discussion or to discuss any candidates that might be running in this election cycle. So thank you all for being here. I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers, but before I do that, I'd like to send a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's Voter 101 session, AARP. We have two wonderful representatives from the Montgomery County Board of Elections. With us is Margaret Jurgensen, the election director. She is a core 2006 graduate. We also have Dr. Gilberto Zelaya. Many people know him as Dr. Z in the community. He is the Community Empowerment and PIO, and he is a core 2010 graduate. We are also thankful to have Tammy Bresnahan with us. She is the Director of Advocacy from AARP Maryland. So thank you all once again, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. Z.
Perfect. Let me see. So good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate the opportunity in which you have allowed Margaret and myself to partake in some information to hopefully give you tips and information so you could develop a vote plan. I'm going to share my slide. Okay. Everyone can see that? Good? Okay, good. So once again, I'm Gilberto Zelaya from the Montgomery County Board of Elections. I have the pleasure of working at the board as a public information community empowerment coordinator, and also have the pleasure of serving our 675,000 plus registered voters. We're going to get into the presentation. Obviously, I might be preaching to the choir, but in order to participate in the franchise, you must be registered to vote. In Maryland, you must be at least 16 years of age, a U.S. citizen, and live in Maryland. Obviously, to vote, you must be 18 by November 3rd, which is the general election date. There's multiple ways into entering the franchise. One of the easiest ways to text the word vote to 77788. You could also go to our website, which is 77vote.org. Keep in mind, if you register online or leverage our texting prompt, that will send you the Maryland State Board of Elections online voter registration link. You must use your Maryland driver's license, permit, or ID. We do recognize that in our community, not everyone has those three forms of ID. So those individuals can leverage the last 4 digits of their social security number. We have set applications on our website in English, Spanish, Korean, traditional, and simplified Chinese. The 3 additional Asian languages, we worked with the State Board of Elections in 2018 to get those translated. Our goal is to get other forms and documents in different languages. We recognize that Montgomery County has 4 out of the 10 most diverse cities in America, which is Gaithersburg, Rockville, Silver Spring, and Germantown. But you could add into that fold parts of basically Wheaton, Glenmont, Aspen Hill, White Oak. Having said that, you could email us. We're kind of popular right now. If you call the 240-777-8500, we're very popular. But if you email us at elections@montgomerycountymd.gov, we will try our best to respond. And we are serving the public Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m. We're implementing physical distancing. to keep both our patrons and our staff safe. And you could also register to vote at the Motor Vehicles Administration, but you must make an appointment before doing so. At any time you move, any life changes, married, divorce, party affiliation, we don't need to know the detail. We just need for you to update your voter registration. It's one of the urban myths that anything from the Board of Elections will be forwarded to your new address. This includes the sample ballots, information from the local Board of Elections or the State Board of Elections. So please, anytime, any life changes, once again, we don't need to know the details, just update your voter registration. You could text the word check to 77788, check to 77788 to review your voter registration. You could call the office. Once again, we're very popular, or our website. And what's important about the check prompt is it's a very useful tool. I will email this PowerPoint, so don't worry about taking notes, and I'll email the corresponding links so you could post on Leadership Montgomery. At said site, it's the Maryland Voter Lookup. You could review your registration. You could also check the status of your mail-in application, your mail-in request, if the ballot was sent out and when it was received and or introduced in the canvas. And you could also review your sample ballot in case your dog ate it or you misplaced it. You could download a copy as well. Moving forward, in case you missed the voter registration deadline, which is a postmark deadline of October 13th, we're about 13 days away. You could leverage same-day voter registration during early voting or on election day. Bring your Maryland ID, driver's license or permit, or a bank statement, utility bill, or governmental ID with your name and current Montgomery County address. Now, voting after a criminal conviction. Once you've completed your court order sentence of imprisonment or incarceration, even if you're on probation, you can rejoin the franchise and you can re-register to vote. But if you've been convicted of buying or selling vote, that's where you will lose your voting privileges in the state of Maryland. Now, obviously, the reason why we're meeting via Zoom, and there's a lot of interest in voting by mail is because of COVID-19. It's still with us. It hasn't gone away. And so if you want to request to vote by mail, it's highly recommended. That's one of the options into leveraging the franchise. We must receive that request by the 20th of October. The voter registration deadline is a postmark date of the 13th of October. So if you do go to the post office and get it postmarked on the 13th, we are obligated to process it even if we receive it a day or two later. But nonetheless, the vote by mail request is a receive deadline. We must have it at the office. So please don't procrastinate. Send your request today. You could text the letters VBM to 77788. Once again, you must have a Maryland driver's license, permit, or ID, or you could go on our website to download, fax the application. You could scan it and mail it to us, or you could drop it off in person. And so there's a lot of noise regarding web delivery. It's not internet voting, okay? You have to download your application. The State Board of Elections will email you a password and a login. You will need to provide your own paper, toner, envelope, and postage. And one of the challenges, the administrative burden will fall on our end because we will need to duplicate those ballots. Web delivery was really created, to allow individuals access to the franchise, especially military personnel, Americans living overseas in countries with poor postal infrastructure, and voters with special needs. That way, if someone is, let's say, had a friend doing the postdoc in Lesotho, as opposed to waiting 2 weeks for our mail-in ballot to arrive to South Africa, she could go to a cyber cafe, print her ballot, and mail it back to us, shortening the time in which she would need to wait for her ballots. But if you're in Rockville, Gaithersburg, highly recommend voting the traditional via postal service. As I mentioned earlier, once we receive those web delivery requests and those ballots, we will need to leverage our bipartisan teams to duplicate said ballot. Last count, we have about 32,000 web delivery ballots we need to duplicate as part of the process. If that's how you wish to vote, we respect that, but we do encourage voting via traditional mail. And because the challenge is that the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that you are printing from home or your office, it's unscannable in our equipment. So we need to duplicate on the official formatted cardstock ballots. And that's the reason why we need to duplicate. And so when you request our ballot, we will pay postage, we will provide a return envelope. you will have the official cardstock ballot. And also, if you look at the third image, there's the official election mail logo, which expedites the process. The image is from the primary. Here in my hand, there's the new return envelope, and it has a privacy screen, which will, those concerns that the signature was visible. With the new envelope, it's not. But please make sure when you vote your ballots that you sign the return envelope. If there's if the signature is missing, we will not incorporate into the canvas, but we will try our best to contact you. So please follow the instructions and do not forget to sign your ballot, but we will do everything in our power to cure it. Now, make a vote plan. You'll have your sample ballot. You can go online. You can use this video and this opportunity to educate and become informed. You have two options. Once you receive your mail-in ballot, you can leverage the U.S. Postal Service, or you can leverage one of our 50 ballot drop boxes. Over the last couple of days, we have installed close to 24 ballot drop boxes. On your sample ballot is installation schedule, location, address, etc. You could also go to our website, which is 777vote.org, and you could see exactly where the closest ballot drop box is to you. Or you could text the word box and your zip code, to 77788, and you'll get the closest Dropbox address to your corresponding zip code. Quickly, the boxes are secure. They're under 24-hour surveillance. We're working with the local authorities to ensure that these boxes do not walk away. They're extremely large, extremely heavy. They're galvanized steel. They're not going anywhere. And we have bipartisan Board of Elections staff emptying out those boxes. We're starting off with one time, once a day. And as we near early voting, twice or more as needed. Obviously, drop boxes in a very dense urban setting will have more visits. Those in those residential areas like Poolsville or Damascus could be a little less. But as we get close to early voting, definitely at minimum 2 to 3 times a day. Please do not sit on your ballot. Send it to us as soon as possible, and I'll explain why. Once our staff will arrive, they will remove tamper tape seals. It's all documented. Once they unseat the tamper tape seals and tags, they will empty the bins, the boxes. They will add new tamper tapes. They will document for the afternoon team that will come to ensure that everything is as it was left when they emptied the boxes, and new seals, etc., will be added. And there's a contingency plan, and there's a process in which our bipartisan team will empty out these boxes to retrieve the ballots. Once we retrieve the ballots, we will hold off for 24 hours as a public health measure because of the world we live in under COVID-19. And once that 24-hour clock ticks, we will start sorting, date stamping, and scanning them as received. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that gentleman is actually scanning my ballot. I did kind of a test run in the primary. And once they scan in my ballot that night, the State Board of Elections will upload that record. And when I go into my voter lookup, the designation will change from ballot mailed or ballot received. And so you could kind of keep the chronological timeline of your ballot request, when the ballot was mailed, when it was received, and or incorporated into the canvas. And it's one less call you can make to the Board of Elections. And so having said that, once we will introduce this into our bipartisan canvas, at all times we have individuals processing their checks and balances and expectations, and we will follow the procedures as laid out by the State Board of Elections. Because of the number of ballots that we are expecting to receive back, we will initiate our canvas starting October 6th. Historically, we would have started that Thursday after Election Day, which would have been November 5th. There's no way we will process close to over 300,000 mail-in ballots, so we will initiate said canvas on the 6th of October. If you do not have a desire to vote by mail, which we highly recommend, we will have in-person voting during early voting, which is Monday, October 26th through Monday, November 2nd, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. All this information is on our website and also our sample ballot. The 11 locations that were actually leveraged in 2018, the board has approved and the State Board of Election has approved, and these are the locations listed. You will hopefully recognize them all, or you'll recognize the one closest to your home, but you're not restricted to the closest one to your home. If you're running an errand, If you're visiting family members and you're closer to one location or another, highly recommend to leverage. Another thing you could do is you could text the letters EV and your zip code, and it will give you the closest early voting locations, address, and wait times. That system will be active on the 26th. There's no wait times now, obviously, because it's not October 26th. So if you test it, you're not going to get anything. But nonetheless, you could also leverage the wait time on our website, which is 777vote.org. So hypothetically, let's say you live, I'm going to throw in somewhere in Albany or Leisure World. You have the Mid-County Rec Center. You also may have the Executive Office Building or the Sandy Spring Fire and Rescue. And if you go to our website and you see that the fire and rescue wait time is 20 minutes, but the other two locations is an hour, just do your math, then go to Sandy Spring. Take in consideration drive time, and early voting will be popular. The first and last day are going to be busy, and the weekend. So just do your due diligence and make a vote plan. And if for some reason you do not vote over those 8 days during early voting from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., the 26th of October through the 2nd of November, we will have 39 vote centers on election day. We will consolidate our traditional 248 neighborhood precincts into 39 vote centers. So you will technically not go to your elementary school or social hall as you've done in the past. The 11 early voting locations, they will be converted into vote centers. And also we will add a full complement of Montgomery County public high schools, except Thomas Edison, which is right next door to Wheaton High School. And we have added the White Oak Senior Community Center, the Nancy Dasick North Potomac Community Center, and the Marriott Hotel North Potomac, the Marriott Hotel Montgomery County Conference Center into that complement. Once again, you're not limited to your closest vote center. You could text the letter VC for vote center and your zip code on the 3rd of November, and it will give you the closest vote centers and wait times, or you could go to our website, which is 777vote.org, to make a vote plan. Obviously, if let's say you're in downtown Silver Spring, and Silver Spring Civic Building has an hour wait, and Blair has an hour and a half, and Wheaton High School has a 20-minute, common sense, drive to Wheaton High School, okay? Make a vote plan. Now, if you do request to vote by mail, you should vote that ballot. If for whatever reason you have a desire to vote in person, you will vote a provisional ballot, period. And you're gonna be adding considerable amount of time to your voting experience. And basically, voting twice is illegal, period, in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia. So if you're requesting to vote by mail, follow through, vote by mail. If you vote in person after requesting to vote by mail, you will vote a provisional ballot, period. And also, lastly, at the vote centers or during early voting for special needs voters or individuals have an interest in using our ballot marking device, it's a tactile touchscreen. What's interesting about the equipment, it allows individuals the ability to vote independently. We have a sip and puff equipment that individuals use to be mobile. They could connect it to the ballot marking device. You have the audio in English or Spanish if you're not functionally, maybe you're functionally illiterate or not as fluent in either of those two languages. You have high or low contrast. You have grayscale, especially for colorblind voters. You can magnify the ballot by 35%. And if you're blind or have issues with your vision, we also have an audio tactile keypad with Braille that you can use to navigate through your ballots. The format is called an activator card. It will print, and that will also be scannable in our scanning units, in addition to the traditional paper. So as a voter during check-in, you will be asked if you would like to leverage the ballot marking device or touchscreen or the traditional paper ballot. Either format will work. And we thank you for this time. Hopefully you learn something new. Make a vote plan, be prepared, leverage your sample ballot, and we're here to serve.
Thank you, Dr. Z. That was a phenomenal amount of information. I'd like to turn it over to Tammy Bresnahan from AARP to share some remarks on behalf of AARP. Tammy.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you to Dr. Z and everybody at the Board of Elections, the local Board of Elections, the State Board of Elections. Since the primary, AARP has been very concerned that the pandemic has made it different for people to try and vote. And what we're trying to do is during the pandemic, because it has been so threatening to health and financial security, we're trying to give people, make sure that they think about the options that they have to vote. We have held a teletown hall in May about the primary because everyone received a ballot in the mail. And then we had a teletown hall with over 10,000 people last Thursday, and we'll have another one on October 21st with the Maryland Board of Elections to talk about, you know, if people got their mail-in ballots, when they should expect their mail-in ballots. And I will say that I was one of those folks that went online in early August, and I have already received my ballot and I've already put it in a lockbox. I live in Anne Arundel County. It's a little bit different. So that was that safe decision that I made for myself. My husband has some pre-existing conditions. So I'm very concerned about going outside and being around other folks. ARB is also talking about the issues. We're fighting to protect the 50 plus, and the voting issues that matter are like protecting Social Security and Medicare and lowering prescription drugs. ARB has adapted to the 2020 reality. Normally, this will be my second presidential election, and the last presidential election, we took volunteers to candidate briefings. For example, we went to Berlin to hear President Trump. We went to Howard County to hear then candidate Kasich, and we also went into Baltimore to see then candidate Hillary Clinton. And we always had groups of people with us. So this election is really looking differently to us, but we want to make sure that people understand that they have to have a plan for voting. They need to have a safe, to know what's safe and what isn't safe. And we're leaving it up to them to make those decisions. For some folks, they want to know, they get the ballot in the mail. They know that they have the time limits, but they want to know where to drop it. And I think Dr. Z just gave a very good, thorough. I mean, when I look at, just the voting selections, while the little elementary school that I normally vote at is right up the street, I have all of these options. I don't know if you can see them now, between now and election day, to drop off my ballot. And so that I'm very fortunate that we've had that information available to us. So if you haven't gotten, you might want to have asked the Board of Elections, when could I expect the ballot if I, got that application for a mail-in ballot that was sent to me in the mail. Throughout the election, AARP will demand action from candidates to make sure they talk about protecting Social Security and Medicare and other issues. And I want to direct you to, if any of you are members, or even if you're not, if you're members of AARP, you're used to getting the magazine once a month called The Bulletin. And in this month's bulletin, that hasn't come out yet, but it is online, we have done a side-by-side on President Trump and Vice President Biden and where they stand on the major issues. And all of their responses are there. So if you want to know how they feel about Medicare, if you want to know how they feel about Social Security, if you want to know how they plan to, lower the cost of prescription drugs, you can go to aarp.org/politics. And then our site, Dr. Z just gave you all that information, and I'm sure you can go to the Board of Elections. But again, on the internet, we have all of the dates, and starting from October 13th through November the 3rd, all the information about what you'll need to vote at aarp.org/Maryland. And so we have tried to get a plethora of information together. We know that there's a lot of decisions. This is a very important election. We know that there's a lot of issues out there at stake. There's been a lot of chatter about the payroll tax. There's been a lot of chatter about the sustainability of Social Security, and those decisions are going to have to be made by you. We know that we want to sustain Social Security, but how that's done is probably best defined by the candidates and how they are, what their plans are for the future. Again, we're thrilled that to partner with Montgomery leadership. We've done a couple of these, and we feel like getting information out to the residents is very important, and that this election has been just a tad bit confusing because of what happened during the primary, that the primary was one date, then it was postponed, and then everyone got a ballot, and then this time they got an application for a ballot. And so making sure that you and your loved ones are aware of what your options are very important to us. And so again, we thank Dana and crew and the Maryland Board of Elections and the Montgomery County Board of Elections. I really appreciate I have all of the Maryland Board of Elections meetings are online, and you can access those. They're public, and some of them were 3 or 4 hours long, going over the county's proposed voting sites, their early voting sites, where the lock boxes were going to be. And that decision making was made by the board. And I can tell you that this election was not taken lightly, that the issues, they have been very concerned that people get the information they need. And I have a very high respect for the folks that are at these Maryland or at the local boards of elections, trying to get that information out to their voters. So any help that we can give you, we've put it out on our website. We're just happy to be here, and we want to make sure you get the information that you need in order to vote safely and to vote on time. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Tammy. That was wonderful. So we're going to get ready to open up questions from all of you. But before we do that, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. And Margaret, I'd love to ask you, what do you feel is the biggest challenge that the Board of Elections is facing with this election cycle? Margaret, you're on mute. There you go.
There, okay. Well, it certainly has been the most challenging election I've ever conducted in the 32 years I've been doing elections. Right now, my greatest concern is to make all 3 elements of the process that the voter can select to function perfectly. Obviously, we have the vote by mail, and so now the ballots are coming in, and we want to ensure that we count as many ballots as we can to post on election night of the vote by mail. We want to make sure that all of our early voting sites are conducted in a socially distant and in a safe way for those individuals who wish to vote in that manner. And we want to make sure that those individuals that vote in person on election day have that same opportunity to vote, hopefully, in less than an hour. And in pulling all of these pieces together with coordination of all the training that goes with integrating all of the election judges, and I believe that we will probably utilize 4,000 to 5,000 citizen voters in Montgomery County to help us conduct this election. So pulling all of those pieces together is it's quite a coordination effort, and we have some outstanding staff here. Roberto's been doing a great job getting the message out about how to vote by mail. Obviously, when the polls close, the voter registration closes, we're going to start pushing early voting if you haven't registered to vote, so you can take care of the same day voter registration process. But I would say just coordinating all of the elements of the voting options and all of the parties that are involved is probably, people say it's 1,000 moving pieces that have to be pulled together correctly in a specific time period, and there's no rain delays.
Do you all have a need for poll workers, or are there any other opportunities for folks who want to think about supporting the election cycle and might be looking for volunteer opportunities?
Right now, we have over 7,000 individuals who have applied to serve as an election judge. Right now, we're down to kind of filling in the finite portions. Might be bilingual, Spanish-speaking. Republican judges are always in a great need in Montgomery County. Herberto, in 2018, we started reaching out to the Asian language and Aramaic languages to make sure that those segments of the population and where the census data has kind of given us an idea of where these this language group might be living. Herberto, you want to
Yes.
touch on that?
So as it pertains, since I mentioned that we do have multiple cities that are extremely diverse. So we have established relationships not only with Montgomery College, the school system, and also a lot of nonprofit organizations. Even today, I ran out this morning before coming here and did a whole kind of in-person nuts to bolts with the Vietnamese American Association in East County. So we recognize that, you know, not every voter in Montgomery County speaks the Queen's English. And so we need to make the franchise accessible and available. We're under Section 203 of the 1975 Voter Rights Act. And this is the reason why everything in Montgomery County is English and Spanish. And just a quick urban myth, you know, if you're 50 years of age and you've been living in the US as a legal resident for 20 years, or if you're 55 years of age and you've been living in the US as a legal resident for 15 years, you could bypass the English civics requirement to become a naturalized citizen. So we recognize that there's large extended family members with grandparents, and those individuals can bypass the English civics. And that's by Homeland Security. So recognizing those numbers, recognizing the diversity of the county, we tend to always do year-round outreach because every day someone's becoming a citizen and someone's turning of age. So we tend not to wait until 30 days before a particular elections, because as administrators, it just makes the lines go smoother, you get less questions, and we could focus on implementing the election.
Thank you. So you mentioned earlier that you're expecting 300,000 mail-in ballots. How many people are you expecting will vote overall this year?
I never do projections like that. That's just, you know, no, I don't do that.
Yeah, we prepare for 100.
Yeah, talk to the state board. They'll give you those numbers.
Yeah, we try to prepare for 100%.
We prepare for 100% voter turnout always.
Perfect. And but you all track afterwards, so you'll be able to let us know what you're seeing in the differences. And knowing that mail-in voting is what you all would prefer that people do, do you think that this will change the future of voting and we'll see an opportunity for people to have better chances to have their own voting plans and might lead them to vote by mail more often?
Well, in the introduction of vote by mail, as liberal as it is today in Maryland, Maryland is coming into this process kind of late when you compare it nationally. Many other states west of the Mississippi have had vote by mail, no excuse. The participation level is something like 40–50%, and in 3 states, Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, it's all vote by mail. There are portions of certain states that I believe, like Montana, Nebraska, the county can decide to just conduct it by mail. So I believe that what will happen out of this whole experience will be a change in the process that people vote. Will people still want to vote in person? Yes, there will still always be individuals that will want to go to an early voting center. There will always be people that will not have their mind made up until the last day. So, and I think these options that have been provided by the legislature and governor of Maryland to have early voting, election day, vote by mail will still exist for the future. But I think this pandemic has changed the way Maryland votes forever.
And piggybacking on Margaret, I totally, you know, support from A to Z what she mentioned, but also keep in mind, regardless on how the election process in Maryland metamorphosizes moving forward, you still need to be registered to vote, and you have to have your voter registration current. So, you know, at the end of the day, you have to do your part, and we will do ours.
Thank you. So I'd be curious to know how many hours a day you guys are working right now. When's the last time you slept? What are you doing for self-care? No, just one of those. What is keeping you going? And how often are you either speaking or working anything elections related these days?
Well, our overtime budget with the county will be breathtaking for the entire department. Quite honestly, because of the decision to have individuals fill out a ballot application, this has impacted us a lot. And so we always ramp up and probably would bring on board 70 or more people. But because of the number of people that are participating in vote by mail, where I believe the other day I was told we were over 109 temporary employees or employees tasked from another department that are assigned to us. I know that most of my staff, including myself, if we work less than 60 hours a week, that's amazing. It's not unusual for staff to work 60 or 70 hours, but we try to keep it to 60 hours a week. People walk away as a temporary employee or possibly a county employee that's been assigned to our department, amazed at the level of work that occurs in a very short span of time. It is intense.
Exactly. And for me, I think the tools that I lean on is my cell phone, coffee, and now it's hand sanitizer. So these are the three things. And even yesterday, my kids kept on entering and saying, "Are you done? Are you done?" Because it was my birthday. And so I was Zooming and they kept on opening the door. I'm like, "Don't come in. I'm not done yet." But yes, this is what we do. I think with Margaret and myself, you don't grow up saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be an election administrator. You fall into the field, but it is very rewarding, at times frustrating. But I think the frustration comes when Margaret, when we get that call at 9:30 at night from a voter, like, are you serious? And so, but we'll try our best. And these opportunities will provide you the tools so you can evangelize on our behalf, which will mitigate calls to the office and everybody will be prepared.
Wonderful. I'm just going to keep asking questions, but I do hope that anyone who's listening in, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'd be happy to read them off for you. What do you all do during, I'll call it the off season, but when there isn't an election, what is the Board of Elections responsible for?
Well, obviously, we have motor vehicles. It's a mandated, let's see, we have motor voter. And what that means is that when you go to motor vehicles, whether you get a driver's license, a state ID, you're automatically registered to vote unless you opt out. We also have year-round voter registration through, and it's not just motor vehicles, it's many state agencies, as well as the federal government has their options. Also, after every election, we have an audit that we use, and that normally takes us about 5 months, in which we take apart the entire election. We look at and see what went well, what didn't work so well. We review our personnel and, try to decide, maybe this person should be assigned to do this because they seem to have a better talent in this one particular area. And then we're always doing list maintenance. So those sample ballots, if you get a sample ballot and it was not for you, for instance, I received a sample ballot for the person that lived in the site I live in now. The thing to do is pop it, there's a little place where you can check not at this address, put it back in the U.S. Postal Service so that we can do list maintenance to keep our lists clean. Additionally, after this election, I think a lot of people will be taking some time off to rest.
Well-deserved time off.
And then come June of this 2021, we begin the cycle all over again. So we will begin the process and meet with our board and say, okay, these are the current early voting centers. Do you wish to keep these, or do we need to research them? And then, of course, we have redistricting coming up after the census is finally completed. And that will be a huge undertaking on the part of the Board of Elections after the legislature, county council, and school board redraw their lines. And that will have a big impact on where people vote and who they're voting for. We're busy all the time.
Yeah, and as it
Sounds
pertains
like
to
it.
me, quickly, we do a lot of, best practices, what worked, what didn't work. We continuously do outreach 24/7. So we're not waiting for an even year to pop up. As I mentioned, someone is turning 16, someone is turning of age. And also there's the municipal elections. We don't coordinate the municipal elections, but individuals do, register and turn of age in those localities. And then we try to, kind of modernize the process. And after the election of 18, we developed a texting prompt. In a couple of weeks, we will have the MoCo voter app that'll be released, and we'll share that with you. So we're always looking for best practices and how to provide the electorate the resources and the tools to succeed.
Thank you.
And just real quickly, the state will be acquiring new poll books. Poll books that we use right now were purchased for the 2006 election. So the state is beginning the process. So we will have to introduce all new poll books, which will, integrate them. A staff will need to be trained, and then all of the election judges will have to be trained on how to use them.
Okay. So we have a couple of questions for you. So the first one is, can you be a poll worker in a county other than where you live?
As long as you're a registered voter of the state of Maryland, yes, you may.
Do you all coordinate with other counties to kind of know each other's needs and refer in any way?
Yes, we do. We even, the other day, we got a phone call from Fairfax County, Virginia, who said, we have way too many election poll workers. Do you need any? And we said, no, thank you. We have plenty.
Is it just because you didn't want anybody from Virginia?
No.
The next question is, I'm a trained election judge. Will I be safe during in-person voting?
First of all, we have spent tremendous amount of, I personally, working with our GIS specialist and the health department, have spent a tremendous amount of time laying out the polling locations so that they are all properly socially distanced. We have plexiglass, we have face shields, we have masks, we have gloves for every election judge that is working at any vote location that we have in Montgomery County. I'm really working very hard with the staff, with the trainers, with the Department of General Services, Department of Health, to make sure that the voting experience is going to be safe, not only for the election judges, but for the voters. So we have as part of our complement of election judges, I have added what we call line managers, and one of their roles will be to make sure that we have the proper social distancing. So one of the big concerns that, Roberto and I both share is that with 4 feet to 6 feet of social distancing, the lines at any in-person voting center is going to look humongously long. And so, but just as if you go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, the line may be super long, but it does move fairly quickly. Additionally, the sites that we've selected, we've opened up as much space as we possibly could. And aside from the EOB, most locations have 60 to 90 voting stations so that people can move in and move out. Once they get their ballot, they make their selections, and they will have 6 to 10 scanners at these locations. They should be able to move through very quickly. And we are having the various voting operations judges take turns wiping down the equipments, and we'll have plenty of pens there. And every so often we'll clean the pens and, you know, re-sanitize them so that, or a voter can bring their own black ballpoint pen to mark their ballot, just as you would if you went to a doctor's office or something.
Oh, you brought up a great point. I remember reading for the mail-in ballots that there is a requirement for the type of pen that you're supposed to use for that as well. Can you let everybody know what that is?
Black ballpoint pen, just black ink. Just don't use a highlighter. Don't use ink, anything that bleeds through, because
Don't
we'll
use
end
a
up.
stylus. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't use
none
a
of that.
stylus or a marker. No crayons, mascara. Use a black or blue pen.
Dark blue, dark blue.
Yes.
Thank you. We have another question. In my mail-in ballot envelope, I received a Declaración Jurada de Votante in Spanish. I did not receive the English version. I do not need to provide ID. Do I sign this form and include it with my ballot envelope?
Roberto.
Yes. So we've gotten that question a lot. So under section 203, we must provide all the information, instructions in the ballot in English and Spanish. However, the instructions, the voter oath, because of the size of the return envelope, it's impossible to have both languages. And because of that, we have inserted the Spanish version of the voter oath that's printed on the return envelope. That's the reason. That's the reason it's a separate sheet of paper. It's just it won't fit. Otherwise, this envelope would be so big. So having said that, you definitely have to sign the return envelope. And for those Spanish speakers that need to either sign the envelope, but they also could sign the Spanish version.
Thank you. So I want to go back. The question about the election judge was shared by Don. Don, I was wondering if you would mind just telling us a little bit about what your experience has been with being an election judge.
Well, of course, this is the first time under these circumstances of the pandemic. 2 years ago, using that as a frame of reference, which was the gubernatorial election, actually, it was quite easy. There weren't any significant health issues, spacing issues. There weren't a lot of questions regarding the ballot. So things went pretty expeditiously. There were enough of us where we were able to take breaks. We were able to support the voters coming in with questions. But that baseline will not be in play this year.
Well, we're trying to, because we have so many individuals interested in serving as election judges, I am working very, very hard to have a number of individuals at the locations. And we are bringing in part-time judges, some of them in the morning, some of them in the evening. We're bringing in what I call the election closing aides because when we set up 75 voting booths and you all have worked 18 hours, the thought of trying to shut down, 75 voting booths is probably pretty appalling. So we're bringing in 4 to 6 individuals at every of the 40 locations to assist you in doing some of the labor portion. The certified election judges, the voting operation judges will still be responsible if you're a chief to close down the scanners, and the voting operations judges will still be required to close the poll books and do all of the security details.
Thank you.
We have another question. Can you discuss the idea of poll watchers that was brought up during the recent debate? What is and is not allowed at a polling place?
A poll watcher is permitted in the state of Maryland, and what that individual does is they sit behind, obviously 6 feet behind, the election judge who is working the poll book. and they will hear the individual say their name, so Margaret Jurgensen, and the month and day and their address, and then the month and day of their birth. And they are able to, they can do a challenge. There are very specific reasons that you can do a challenge, but generally it's for identity. And if an individual has their driver's license and they can prove that they are who they are, then the individual votes automatically. Otherwise, it's a provisional ballot because it's a challenge ballot. So we have historically not had very much participation, poll watchers. When we first introduced early voting back in 2010, we did have early voting poll watchers. Mostly they came in at the end of the evening to make sure that the process of closing the units so that they could open the next morning was observed. But but they are permitted. They cannot talk to the voters. The only people that that poll watcher may speak to is one of the two chief judges.
Thank you. So we have about 5 minutes left, and before I close this out, I'd like to hear from each of you kind of what your hope for this election season and its success might be, and I'll start with you, Tammy.
We're just hoping that folks get, vote the safest way possible, that they know what their options are, that they know what the dates are, that they know where their polling places are, and that they get to exercise their right to vote. We also want to send a big thank you to all the folks at the local boards of elections, the Maryland Board of Elections, for all the work, the time, the energies that they've been doing to make sure that Maryland can vote and they can vote safely. So we really appreciate being a part of this and being a part of making sure that people get the right information. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you. Margaret?
For me, it's kind of what's driven me since I worked on my master's degree thesis, and that is the peaceful transition of government. And this is conducted at the grassroots level by the citizens who are the voters of your jurisdiction. So that's my goal, is to have a successful, peaceful transition to whatever government is elected by the voters, so that on December, when the school board is seated, Congress is seated, and the president is seated, there is no civil conflict.
Thank you. Dr. Z?
So for me, really is the desire that our voters make a vote plan. I think it's kind of a marriage. It's a 50-50, meet individuals halfway. We're here to serve. And so we will provide the tools for the individuals to succeed, but you do need to read the stuff we sent to you. So.
Gotcha. So I'd like to thank Tammy and AARP, and from the Montgomery County Board of Elections, Margaret Jurgensen and Dr. Gilberto Zelaya, for being with us today. So my key takeaways from this great presentation and discussion is, if you are making a plan, please make your plan. Make sure that if you are choosing to vote by mail, you do so by October 20th. Early voting begins by October 26th, and just to make sure that you have a voting plan. So before we part, I just want to make sure that you're all aware of a few upcoming Leadership Montgomery events. We hope that you'll join us on October 14th for virtual homecoming, which will take place via Zoom at 4 o'clock. On October 15th, we have Building Workplace Wellbeing, Practical Ways to Support Employees. That will be at 12 o'clock. And then finally, on October 28th, we will be doing a virtual CEO lunch. That is also at 12 o'clock. I'm going to be giving everybody 2 minutes back to their day. Thank you all for being with us, and we hope to see you soon.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. This is wonderful.